expect with a big occasion like this. So yeah, lots to look forward to.
Will we be seeing Harry and Meghan?
Well, I mean, I'm just giving you all the glitz and glamour, and we still come back to Harry and Meghan, don't we? But
I know.
Well, you see, that is what the king should do with Prince Harry. That way, Meghan Markle will no longer be the Duchess of Sussex, a place she is unlikely to visit, as by all accounts she has refused to set foot in the UK ever again.
No one ever believed this day would come. After years of speculation, denials, and those haunting whispers echoing through palace corridors, the unimaginable has become reality. King Charles has crossed a line no one thought he'd ever touch. In a move that's sending shockwaves through the monarchy, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been stripped of their royal titles, no longer the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Of course, they were getting it from every which direction when, Meghan and Harry were off on their gallivanting, we want privacy tour.
Yes, you heard that right. The very titles that once embodied a new era of royalty, modern, global, untouchable, are now erased, gone as if they never existed. The downfall wasn't loud or chaotic. It was surgical, almost poetic. Even palace insiders are calling it a Shakespearean betrayal, executed with chilling precision. It began, as all royal earthquakes do, not with noise, but with silence. That eerie, suffocating silence that makes journalists refresh their screens in disbelief. Then, just before sunrise, the royal family's official website flickered out, scheduled maintenance, they said. But when it returned, something had shifted. A subtle alteration. A quiet deletion. And in that barely noticeable edit, centuries of royal history had just been rewritten.
In order, when you go to the website, now they're much lower down. They're below Princess Alexandra and Duke of Kent, because obviously they're not working members of the royal family.
Where it once read, Their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, the page now showed something shockingly plain. Just Harry and Meghan. No crowns. No Sussex. No royal grace, only names stripped bare. Within minutes, the internet detonated. Hashtag No More Duke surged across every platform. Major networks halted their regular broadcasts. And then came the palace's statement, a mere 67 words, but it struck like a thunderclap around the world. His Majesty the King has directed that, in light of recent developments and ongoing concerns regarding the integrity...
Favourite source for royal news, and quite right, not that we're biased. Harry said in his BBC interview that he was forced to step away from royal duty due to security concerns.
For months, the tension between the royal brothers had been a silent storm, rumbling just beneath the surface. But insiders say Prince William finally snapped. According to a senior aide, he wasn't motivated by rivalry. He was driven by fear. It wasn't jealousy, the source claimed. It was survival. The breaking point came with whispers of yet another explosive documentary, one reportedly more dangerous than anything before. Meghan and Harry, it was said, were preparing to pull back the final curtain, the royal finances. And in the world of crowns and secrets, that's the line you never cross. William, backed by Queen Camilla and the monarchy's most powerful advisors, urged the king to strike swiftly and decisively. And strike he did. Across the ocean in Montecito, the news hit like a thunderbolt. Meghan was stunned into silence. Sources say a nearby camera crew caught her whispering, almost trembling he wouldn't dare. Harry, on the other hand, erupted. Pacing the kitchen, his face flushed, he swung between rage and disbelief. He had long feared this moment, but deep down, he never thought his father, the man he once called his hero, would actually do it.
Apparently, palace officials have been trying their hardest to strip Harry of his titles.
This wasn't just a loss of titles, it was the erasure of identity itself. Heritage, lineage, the last fragile thread tying Harry to the kingdom he once called home, all severed in a single stroke. And with it, something inside him shattered, quietly but completely. Back in London, royal correspondents raced to make sense of the earthquake. Was this punishment? Exile? Or something far more deliberate? A clean surgical cut between the monarchy and its most unpredictable outcasts? Whatever it was, one truth echoed louder than the rest. The Sussex experiment was officially dead. And behind palace walls, the king exhaled. According to insiders, it was the hardest move of his reign, but also the one that brought him grim relief. Charles, now 76 and painfully aware of time closing in, could no longer gamble with his crown's credibility. The endless interviews, the explosive memoirs, the documentaries that peeled back royal skin, all had left a stain he couldn't wash away. So, in the coldest act of his rule, he chose legacy over love. But the real twist? This wasn't a symbolic slap on the wrist. This was law. Months before the world knew, the king had quietly met with constitutional experts and government ministers under absolute secrecy. Hidden within a locked chamber, a royal decree, a letters patent, was drafted and signed, sealing the Sussex fate long before the headlines hit. By the time the announcement shook the internet, it was already over. Irreversible. Final. Even Parliament learned after the fact. One stunned lord was overheard whispering, "This isn't a demotion, it's an execution. The Sussexes are finished."
Does not distinguish between private or commercial use of the HRH. It reads, with the Queen's blessing, the Sussexes will continue to maintain their private patch.
Meanwhile, across the ocean, Hollywood's response hit like a tidal wave, swift, merciless, and loud. Within hours, publicists, PR strategists, and image consultants were in open debate. What would become of the Sussex brand now that the royal magic had been stripped away? Those titles had been more than formality. They were currency. Prestige. The illusion of power wrapped in fairy tale gold. Without them, Harry and Meghan were no longer global royals. They were just another California couple with cameras and chaos. The spell's broken, one insider said bluntly. They're not the Duke and Duchess anymore. They're just Harry and Meghan. And in the billion-dollar business of storytelling, that single difference was devastating. Even Netflix, the giant that once hailed their story as a modern revolution, began to flinch. Executives quietly reviewed contracts, questioning the allure that once sold millions. One producer put it colder than the rest. The crown was the hook. Without it, it's just another Hollywood script. In the following days, the media painted Montecito as a palace under siege. Meghan's PR team working around the clock, phones lighting up like sirens, lawyers and emergency calls, and Harry, silent, detached, a storm behind glass. According to one insider, Meghan called an emergency meeting, gathering her entire staff with steel in her voice. No one else tells this story, she declared. We control the narrative.
In Meghan of their royal titles, the New York Post is reporting that locals in the UK say enough is enough, especially after Prince Harry's disastrous BBC interview with...
But as the days stretched on, it became painfully clear even Meghan's legendary media machine couldn't spin this storm. This wasn't just another feud or flashy headline. This was final. Constitutional. The royal gates had been slammed shut and, this time, locked from the inside. Still, one question haunted the marble halls of Buckingham Palace. Why now? Why did the king strike at this exact moment? Some royal analysts claim it was preemptive, a counterattack against whispers of a second, even more explosive memoir from the Sussex camp, one said to reveal the monarchy's most guarded secrets. Others point to Prince William's growing influence, suggesting the heir had quietly begun steering his father's rule from the shadows. Either way, the battle lines were drawn. And on one side stood the king and his crown. On the other, Harry and Meghan, stripped, defiant, and furious. When the world learned of the title removal, it gasped. But in Montecito, that gasp became a roar. Insiders say Meghan's initial shock turned to fury that rattled the mansion's glass walls. She reportedly stormed out of a PR call, slammed her phone down, and shouted, "They'll regret this. Every single one of them." This wasn't the polished Duchess seen at charity galas and podcast studios. This was Meghan unleashed, the Hollywood tactician who'd fought her way to power once and wasn't about to fall quietly. Within 24 hours, a new phrase began circulating inside her team, Operation Phoenix, her personal counterstrike. A rebirth mission, insiders said, crafted to seize back control of the narrative and hit the palace where it hurt most. Meghan gathered her inner circle, stylists, publicists, brand architects, at her Montecito home. One attendee described it as a war council disguised as a brunch. No champagne. No laughter. Just caffeine, laptops, and rage. She wasn't crying anymore, the insider confessed. She was planning. Her first move? Reinvention. Meghan ordered a total overhaul of her empire. The Duchess title was dead. In its place, Meghan Markle, the movement. Her website, her podcast, her lifestyle brand, all were to be reborn as a global empowerment crusade. But beneath this sleek rebrand, there was steel and vengeance. This wasn't just reinvention. It was retaliation. Every post, every caption, every whisper fed to the press was crafted like a weapon, each one echoing the same seductive idea. Meghan didn't lose her titles. She transcended them. That, insiders say, was the beating heart of Operation Phoenix, to twist humiliation into victory, to make Buckingham Palace look petty for ever trying to cage her. But across the ocean, the palace was far from fooled. Behind the locked gates of Clarence House, King Charles and Prince William convened in crisis mode. The mood was tense, half dread, half defiance. They've seen what Meghan can do with a camera, one senior courtier admitted. She doesn't just speak, she detonates. They knew this wouldn't fade quietly. Meghan would turn her pain into performance, her fury into spectacle. According to leaks, top royal communication strategists advised a single iron rule: do not engage. The palace would maintain silence. Officially, no comment. Unofficially, the monarchy began fortifying its defenses, steeling itself for the cultural war about to unfold. Meanwhile, Hollywood buzzed like a live wire. Meghan's reps were allegedly in talks with major streaming platforms, teasing a mysterious new project centered on truth, resilience, and rebirth. To critics, it reeked of another royal exposé. To supporters, it was her comeback coronation. But not everyone was cheering. Several high-profile allies quietly retreated. One studio head was overheard muttering, "She's radioactive. Anything royal right now is poison." The message was brutal. Meghan's empire would have to fight this one alone. Inside Montecito, that isolation began to split the household. While Meghan plotted her resurgence, Harry fell silent. Sources described him wandering the garden for hours, phone in hand, dialing his father's private number again and again. Each call met with nothing but emptiness. He was broken, one insider confessed. He kept whispering, "He's my dad." How could he do this? To Harry, the title had never been about power, it was belonging. The last fragile bridge to his mother's memory, his homeland, his name. Losing it felt like losing Diana all over again. But for Meghan, this wasn't mourning, it was war. And that emotional divide, his heartbreak versus her fury, became the silent crack threatening to tear them apart. The first blow of Meghan's revenge came disguised as a leak. Not an interview. Not a rant. A whisper with perfect timing. An insider told a top US outlet that Prince William planned to strip Harry and Meghan of all remaining privileges once he became king. The article painted Meghan as the wounded truth-teller, abandoned for defying tradition, vulnerable, brave, wronged. It was sharp, emotional, and masterfully manipulative. But the palace struck back with surgical precision. Within hours, royal correspondents began receiving quiet clarifications from senior aides. Not official statements, just nudges, whispers, reminders. The removal, they said, wasn't sudden. Harry and Meghan had been warned months in advance. This was not revenge. It was duty. The message beneath those calm words was unmistakable. The monarchy does not bleed, it endures. This wasn't revenge, it was regulation. Cold, constitutional order. Still, Meghan refused to back down. Sources say she began calling her oldest Hollywood allies, pitching a bombshell sit-down to reclaim her voice. Some say she reached out to Oprah once more. Others whisper she planned her own Meghan, unfiltered digital special. But this time, the industry hesitated. The charm had curdled into controversy. "We're exhausted," one major producer confessed. Every Meghan interview becomes a war zone. It was a brutal awakening, the moment the media queen realized her crown was slipping. And the palace knew it. Then came the twist no one saw coming. According to multiple insiders, Prince William quietly attended a classified meeting with senior parliamentary advisors. the same officials who had reviewed the king's secret decree. What was said remains sealed, but one government source later admitted that was the day William became the monarch in waiting. Not just the heir, the protector. He wasn't defending his father anymore. He was defending the crown. When word of that meeting reached Montecito, Meghan reportedly saw red. "He's behind this," she told a close friend. William's orchestrating everything. That fury, once emotional, turned tactical. Within hours, Operation Phoenix shifted into its next phase. Meghan allegedly ordered her team to strike first. By week's end, a new documentary pitch began making rounds in Los Angeles, centered not on the royal family, but on women silenced by institutions. Insiders said it was Meghan's masterstroke, recasting her feud as a global cause. She wasn't fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman denied a voice. But back in London, the palace had already anticipated her next move. According to leaked memos, a confidential royal report had been commissioned weeks earlier, a full audit of Harry and Meghan's projects, statements, and financial ties since stepping down. The purpose? To build a paper shield. Evidence that stripping them of their final royal privileges was not vindictive, but necessary. By the weekend, both sides were dug in. In Montecito, Meghan's PR team burned the midnight oil, screens glowing as they crafted the narrative that would shake the monarchy once again. Across the ocean, palace courtiers worked just as feverishly, drafting statements they prayed they'd never need to release. The board was set. Every word a weapon. Every move a countermove. This wasn't about titles anymore, it was about survival. And then came Monday. At dawn, Meghan made her move. Not through a headline, not through a camera, but through a single haunting post on her brand's new teaser page. White text. Black screen. They can take a title, but they'll never take my truth. Within minutes, the internet detonated. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all caught fire. The war for the crown had officially gone digital. Hashtags like #Justice for Meghan and #Abolish the Monarchy ignited across continents, turning timelines into battlegrounds. Her loyalists flooded social media with outrage, while critics accused her of yet another victim narrative. The split was immediate, the chaos intentional. Because behind that one haunting post lay an entire operation, meticulously funded, precisely timed, and engineered to strike the monarchy at its softest point, public opinion. Within days, a series of curated leaks began appearing in top U.S. entertainment outlets. Anonymous sources close to Meghan described her as betrayed but brave, portraying King Charles as frigid and William as the mastermind behind her public undoing. One headline screamed, Prince William's secret role in Meghan's humiliation. Was this his plan all along? Inside royal walls, the reaction was electric. Aides scrambled to squash the whispers, but it was too late. The damage was viral. The fairy tale image of the Fab Four, once the monarchy's greatest PR weapon, was now ash in the public eye. And somewhere deep in Buckingham Palace, a chilling realization took hold. Meghan wasn't merely retaliating, she was winning. But across the ocean, Prince William was facing a very different storm. Behind closed doors, senior courtiers began to panic. They feared the king's decision, though legally airtight, looked cruel to a younger, more progressive generation. And the more Meghan painted herself as a silenced woman reborn, the more whispers spread through the palace corridors. Had they gone too far? William, insiders say, bore the brunt. He believed in the decision, one aide confided. But when the backlash came, everyone else hid. He was left standing in the fire. For a man who had spent his life preparing to protect the monarchy, the headlines branding him as the villain weren't just humiliating, they were dangerous. While William weathered the media inferno, Meghan escalated her campaign. What followed was nothing short of a media blitzkrieg. A glossy magazine cover appeared, Meghan bathed in golden California sunlight under the headline, Free at Last, Meghan Markle on finding her voice beyond the crown. The feature was pristine, the quotes carefully chosen. Every line carried the same message, Meghan wasn't broken. She was liberated. But as her image soared, darker rumors began to swirl. Hollywood insiders leaked that her team was engaging in behind-the-scenes pressure tactics, emotional appeals, late-night calls, even veiled threats to journalists. One top reporter privately claimed, "Her people called us 3 times demanding we retract a story. They called it negotiation. We called it intimidation." The tide began to turn. The same media that once worshipped her freedom narrative now tiptoed away, wary of the drama. Meghan's counterattack had burned too hot, consuming her own allies. Meanwhile, in London, William's patience snapped. After days of headlines painting him as heartless, he called a private meeting with the king and senior advisors. "The monarchy cannot survive if lies go unchallenged," he reportedly said. But King Charles, ever the stoic diplomat, held firm. No response. No reaction. No emotion. It was the old rule of the crown's silence above scandal. But silence no longer worked in the age of algorithms. Every unspoken word looked like guilt. Every delay gave Meghan more ground. William was torn, his instinct screamed to fight, but his duty demanded stillness. Then came the twist that changed everything. Out of nowhere, a leaked voice recording hit the internet, a conversation between one of Meghan's senior staffers and an unnamed producer. The voice bragged about shaping William into the villain edit in upcoming coverage. Within hours, the clip went viral. If authentic, it proved what the palace had suspected all along. Meghan's campaign wasn't emotional. It was engineered. The online tide flipped overnight. Hashtags transformed from hashtag Justice for Meghan to hashtag Meghan manipulated the media. The palace seized its moment. Quietly, they fed journalists new stories, accounts of William's private attempts to reconcile with Harry, his concern for his father's health, his efforts to preserve family unity. Suddenly, the villain looked like a son trying to hold the pieces together. Meghan's story of oppression began to crumble under its own contradictions. The public saw the seams. The performance had become too polished, too controlled, too Hollywood. And that's when it happened. Her grip on the narrative began to slip. In Montecito, Meghan's fury was volcanic. Her analytics team reported a nosedive in positive engagement. The American audience that once worshipped her was now drifting away. She blamed her staff, the tabloids, eventually, even Harry. But deep down, she knew the storm she had started was finally turning on her. And for the first time since the royal purge began, Meghan Markle fell silent. Not strategic, not rehearsed, just stunned.
Finally deal with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Radar Online is reporting that the Prince of Wales plans to strip Harry and Meghan of their Sussex title.
Because for all her strategy and mastery of the spotlight, Meghan had forgotten one brutal truth. The public's hunger for chaos always turns on its creator. In London, as the uproar finally began to fade, Prince William arrived at Kensington Palace for an early morning briefing. Staffers noted how composed he seemed, calm, almost unburdened. He said very little, one aide recalled. But his last words stayed with us. The truth always wins, even when it's quiet. For the first time in months, the monarchy's footing felt steady again. Yet the peace was fragile because Meghan Markle wasn't finished. Behind Montecito's manicured gates, she was preparing her most desperate move yet, one that would test not only the palace and Hollywood, but the limits of her own marriage. The days following her silence felt eerie, the calm before the aftershock. While London returned to business as usual, whispers from California painted a very different picture. Inside her mansion, Meghan was plotting her final gamble, a last attempt to reclaim the narrative and reforge herself as the wronged heroine. But history would remember it as the move that shattered what remained of her credibility. It began, fittingly, with a leak, but this time, not from her team. A Hollywood insider working on a documentary pitch tied to Meghan's new lifestyle brand handed an early proposal to a top magazine. The pitch's message was unmistakable, a woman silenced by power, reclaiming her identity from a monarchy that feared her truth. In short, Meghan Markle, the sequel. At first, it looked like her boldest play yet. She was ready to speak again, louder than ever. But there was a fatal flaw. The world had moved on. When the news broke, the public's reaction was immediate and ice cold. Not this again. She's milking it for the 5th time. Let it go, Meghan. The fatigue was deafening. What once felt revolutionary now seemed rehearsed. Even her allies began slipping away, invitations ignored, brand tie-ins declined, smiles replaced with silence. Nobody wanted to be the next headline in her comeback crusade, one Hollywood insider admitted. She'd become radioactive. Still, Meghan pressed forward. Her PR engine roared to life, glossy shoots, empowerment messaging, scheduled appearances. But just as her campaign began to stir momentum, the palace delivered its final blow quiet, surgical, devastating. Early Sunday morning, the royal family website updated without warning. No statement, no leaks, no fanfare, just one chilling edit. Under members of the royal family, the names Harry, Duke of Sussex, and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, vanished. In their place, Prince Henry Charles Albert David, Meghan Markle. No titles, no ceremony, just erasure. Screenshots spread within minutes. Anchors cut into live broadcasts. CNN headlined, "The final cut, Palace officially erases Sussex titles." British tabloids thundered in unison, "No more Duke and Duchess." It was over. Inside Montecito, chaos erupted. Sources claimed Meghan was inconsolable, pacing, shouting, disbelief in her eyes. She kept saying they wouldn't dare. Not after everything. But they had. And it was the stillness, the terrifying grace, with which the palace executed its move that made it fatal. There was nothing to fight, nothing to defend. Just silence. In London, King Charles spent the morning in quiet reflection at Sandringham, while William and Kate appeared at a charity event, smiling serenely for the cameras. No comment. No tension. No reaction. That, insiders whispered, was the point. After years of scandal, leaks, and emotion, the crown had learned its sharpest weapon against chaos was not noise, it was silence. And in that silence, they won. For Harry, however, the cost was unbearable. Sources say he was visibly shaken, not for himself, but for his children. He wanted them to have the choice of belonging, one confidant shared softly. But the bridge was gone, burned and buried. From that day forward, Harry appeared changed, quieter, distant, his once easy smile replaced by something hollow. The freedom he'd been promised now looked like exile. Weeks later, Meghan attempted one final resurrection, a multi-million-dollar tell-all special. Cameras were prepped, deals signed, until suddenly, everything collapsed. Sponsors withdrew. Networks backed away. The reason? A quiet memo from the palace's legal team. No threats. No accusations. Just a reminder, accuracy is paramount when discussing matters of state and hereditary titles. Translation: tread carefully or not at all. The project died before filming began. And, just like that, the noise faded. The hashtags disappeared. Hollywood moved on. For Meghan Markle, the woman who once commanded the world's attention, only silence remained. Not the triumphant kind, but the kind that comes after the storm, when even the echo gives up. In London, the monarchy stood bruised but unbroken. King Charles had safeguarded his legacy. William had proven his resolve. And as the palace lights glowed against the evening mist, one truth endured. They had fought the crown. And the crown did what it always does. It outlasted them, not with fury, not with spectacle, but with the one thing power never needs to shout: dignity.